eventually something like this would likely happen.
The cleanup continues tonight.
You know you've really got a catastrophe on your hands.
We depend on this water out of the river.
This is a statewide issue.
Could this massive leak have been prevented?
We're taking responsibility for it.
It's time for them to step up to the plate.
I don't know if we'll ever have all the answers.
Flowing more than 200 miles through North Carolina and Virginia, the Dan River is a beautiful passage. But east of the town of Eden, above the twists and turns of the river, sit the smokestacks of a retired coal plant and its ash ponds that would end up tainting much more than just the water. Eden Mayor Wayne Tuggle says for his town, it was a catastrophe.
We're going to have this dubious distinction to have the third largest coal ash spill in the United States. And that's not the distinction that you want.
So this is the Dan River Steam Station. It's been retired for a couple of years, but you can see they literally built it right on the river so they can use that water to generate the electricity. And right on the other side of this dam are those coal ash ponds.
On February 2nd, a Duke Energy pipe collapsed, gushing tens of thousands of tons of coal ash into the river. Duke Energy crews immediately started working to push back the leftover ash from the pond, but it took nearly a week to stop the spill. Now this is it, the 48-inch pipe that collapsed, spewing 35 million gallons of coal ash directly into the Dan River. You can see it's all been bricked up now, but it runs directly underneath Duke Energy's coal ash pond, and it's one of several pipes that we pulled inspection reports on and found dating back all the way to 2006. Inspectors warned Duke Energy to keep an eye on. This is one of those reports obtained by WNCN Investigates telling Duke to check the outfall. Inspectors recommended using a camera to look inside, which may have shown them something like this. Leaks coming from a second pipe nearly 2 weeks later under the same ash pond. State regulators told Duke to immediately address the issue, but even with these pipes sealed, the power company's problems were far from over. Jonathan Rodriguez, WNCN News.
Something like this affects a lot of people.
First, eliminate the source.
We apologize that this incident occurred.
If we can't grow anything, we can't pay anything.
They've known about this. The state has known about this.
Coal ash contains toxic elements in substantial amounts.
In his lab at North Carolina State University, Dr. David Buckwalter studies the impacts toxic elements have on the environment. He says coal ash includes metals like lead and mercury, as well as arsenic known to cause cancer and selenium shown to cause mutations in fish.
When ash is mixed with water, it provides the opportunity to release those toxic materials from it.
And it's something riverkeepers have been fighting for years.
It's a huge problem, and it's one that has been neglected for a long time.
Coal ash is the biggest contributor to water pollution in the country.
Duke Energy has nearly 3 dozen coal ash ponds. All of them sit right next to a river or lake.
Literally, you could throw a rock from the Neuse River and land it on top of the coal ash.
And all of them are leaking.
I'm sorry this incident occurred. We are accountable for what happened, and we will fix this problem.
Duke Energy took responsibility for the Dan River spill, and the state immediately began running water tests. They say the city drinking water is safe, but more potential long-term impacts are starting to surface.
You do worry about the crops, and you do worry about livestock, and you worry about the aquatic life, and you want to have clean rivers.
Hundreds of acres of farmland line the banks downstream from the spill. Farmers like Jerry Apple use the river for irrigation and still don't know if the water is safe to use on their crops. Jerry says planting season for corn is right around the corner.
Hopefully it's going on down the river and not going to be a problem, but we don't know that.
And what about the wildlife? We rode along with Diener as they collected dozens of fish from the Carr Reservoir for monitoring.
Some of the mid-sized and the larger sunfish, those could potentially be consumed by people. The smaller stuff is representative of what wildlife would consume.
It's one of 5 sites the state is using to test from, comparing these fish who haven't had time to be affected by possible contamination to fish they'll catch and test again in a year.
We just have to see, you never know.
In the lab, the fish are classified, sorted, and weighed.
471 grams.
They're then filleted or blended and tested for any metals that may be found in coal ash, metals that experts say could stay in the river forever.
There's not a whole lot that can be done treatment-wise once these materials are in the environment.
And while impacts continue to be evaluated, the spill has prompted the state and environmental groups to start taking a much closer look at all of Duke Energy's ponds.
Drinking water, public safety, there's a lot at stake. It's not just an environmental problem.
This material is way too enriched in toxic metals.
It's the #1 toxic water pollution source.
It's a call to clean up all the coal ash ponds.
We're getting conflicting reports about the toxins detected in a North Carolina river.
These things are leaking from all over the place.
Coal ash contains toxic elements in substantial amounts.
North Carolina is one of the top 10 producers of coal ash in the country. For years, it's been stored in unlined ponds, and for years, riverkeepers have been fighting to clean it up.
Duke has done a really good job of downplaying the impact of these coal ash ponds.
Duke Energy has nearly 3 dozen ponds that sit right next to rivers.
Literally, you could throw a rock from the Neuse River and land it on top of the coal ash.
29 of them are surrounded by dams that have been given a high hazard rating for the potential environmental damage if they were to collapse. Something the nation saw in 2008 when the largest coal ash spill in history coated Kingston, Tennessee with more than 1 billion gallons of sludge. Peter Harrison with the Waterkeeper Alliance.
Here we are 5 years later, and we've still failed to prevent these kind of very preventable disasters from happening.
It sparked an outcry of concern but never led to federal regulation. And here in North Carolina, it left the Department of Environment and Natural Resources to supervise the storage of ash.
Unfortunately, Duke has had a lot of favoritism from North Carolina Department of Environment and Natural Resources, shielding them from enforcement.
The Yadkin Riverkeeper took us down the Dan River. The massive spill here was the 3rd largest of its kind, but it's not the only problem Duke's coal ash ponds are facing.
These things are leaking from all over the place.
Their leaks, toxicologist David Buckwalter says, can expose surface and groundwater to metals like lead and mercury, as well as arsenic, which is known to cause cancer, and selenium.
Malformation of the face and mouth parts and curvature of the spinal column.
These are fish found in Sutton Lake near Wilmington after coal ash seepages contaminated the water there.
We've had situations where here in North Carolina, historically, where we've had complete collapses of fisheries as a result of selenium.
Each one of those leaks is illegal, and each one of those leaks that the power company knows about is a crime.
Duke said, quote, "We continue to believe Duke Energy has complied with existing water discharge permits."
Now, we've tried several times at multiple locations to show you these coal ash ponds, but every time we're met with this, Duke Energy's private property that they won't let us on.
But WNCN Investigates obtained these aerial pictures of the Cape Fear steam station, where Duke Energy was cited for this. Diener says the company was illegally pumping out 2 of their ponds. Duke says it was routine maintenance and, again, part of their permit. The state disagreed.
Now, Diener estimates Duke Energy pumped about 61 million gallons of contaminated water right here into the Cape Fear River. It's one of the largest river systems in our state, not only used for recreation from boaters and fishers, but it's also one of the main water supplies for areas like Dunn, Fayetteville, Sanford, all the way down to Wilmington.
Coal ash has forever enjoyed this sort of exalted status where it's sort of above the law, and I think it's a testament to the political power of those who are generating it and disposing it.
We need action with a sense of urgency from Duke Energy.
Clean it up right now! There are certainly a lot of unanswered questions.
There is a real big public health issue.
It's time to act, and it's time to stop talking.
I can assure you it's not that simple.
Come clean the quarry! Come clean the quarry!
The issues have put the state under fire from environmental groups and federal investigators who are now questioning Diener's relationship with the nation's largest public utility.
The environmental agency, whose mission is to protect public health and the environment, continues to downplay threats to public health and the environment.
People making the waste and disposing of the coal ash have so much political influence over the regulators.
Diener Secretary John Scavarla says that's just not true.
I'm incredulous that anybody thinks that we have not taken action on this.
He maintains the state has done everything in its power to mitigate the issue.
Our goal was to get to the cleanup issue as quickly and expeditiously as possible.
Diener and Duke Energy are now the center of a federal criminal investigation, with prosecutors trying to determine if Diener employees may have taken bribes to turn a blind eye. But with so many known problems, it begs the question, why haven't these ponds been cleaned up?
Their only acceptable remedy was dig them up, move them to lined landfills, and cover them. We're talking 14 facilities and 32 coal ash ponds. I can assure you it's not that simple.
The state also admitted they have the authority to stop unpermitted seeps.
I mean, if we really want to do that, I guess we could do that.
Why wouldn't you want to do that?
Because our actions are always based on the potential threat to the environment. If you have a small seep and it's de minimis compared to your actual permitted discharge, then we can add it to your permit.
The bottom line, Diener says once the tainted water reaches the river, it's diluted to levels that are approved by state standards. But in a meeting with the State Oversight Committee, a Duke Energy spokesman said they are working on a better solution.
Simply put, we're taking another look at those plans.
Diener initially asked for 1 year to assess the best way to address these ponds, but a citizen lawsuit changed that. Attorney Frank Holloman.
Diener and the Secretary of Diener has been going around saying, we want to clean this up, but we don't have the authority. The court has now told them, you've been misreading the law. You do have the authority.
Duke Energy now has judges' orders to clean up all of their ponds, an outcome many have been pushing for, and an outcome they say may never have come to light without the disastrous spill.
In many ways, this has been a blessing because it has brought attention.
Protecting our water quality is something that must be done.
If the state continues to fail in its responsibility to enforce those laws, then we will do it ourselves.
From the pile to the furnace, when you burn coal for power, there's always going to be some kind of pollution. Federal regulation has gotten the air cleaner, but what you're left with is ash. And in North Carolina, there's plenty of it.
We have over 100 million tons of coal ash that is contaminating rivers, surface water, groundwater.
There are 3 major utilities in the 2 Carolinas. 2 of the 3 have agreed to clean up their coal ash. Duke is the only one that has refused to.
Frank Holloman's with the Southern Environmental Law Center, the group whose lawsuit now forced Duke Energy to clean their ponds up. The utility company has released their plan saying they will move most of the ash to lined landfills. But is there a better way? We decided to see how it's being done by our neighbors to the south.
Over our whole system, we have 11 million tons of coal ash.
At Santee Cooper Power near the coast of South Carolina, ash is being reused.
Every situation is unique. We benefit from having close proximity to the customers who can use this ash.
Now, all of this used to be wetlands, but it's now one of 7 of Santee Cooper's coal ash ponds. It's 169 acres and holds 1.7 million tons of coal ash that they're in the process of removing.
But first, you've got to dig it up. Tractors load the ash hundreds of pounds at a time into a giant sifter. Grass and sticks are taken out and the ash is sorted by size. Larger chunks get thrown in again until it's about the consistency of dirt. Then it's hauled off to here, where the ash gets recycled.
A lot of people just dispose of the ash, but from our perspective, it's a tremendous resource.
Jimmy Knowles is with the CIFA Group. The company has developed new technology that allows them to recycle wet ash from ponds.
Even though it's not hazardous, you need to handle it properly. So if we are able to beneficially use the material to produce concrete or use it in plastic or paints or things like that, then it's not available to cause any harm.
Here they treat the ash, burning off contaminants like carbon and making it usable for construction.
So after the recycling process, this is your final product. You can see it's a much finer, almost powdery fly ash, and it actually makes concrete stronger and more durable, and it's used all over the state.
They load it onto trucks, then haul it off to concrete companies. They mix it with water, sand, and cement. Then it's off to the work site. And in South Carolina, it's used on roads. So WNCN Investigates checked the numbers and found more than 19,000 tons of recycled fly ash was used in North Carolina construction projects last year. In fact, our state requires fly ash to be used in bridge construction.
A bridge that might last 50 years, when it's enhanced with fly ash, that same bridge might last 100 years.
Santee Cooper admits digging up pond ash isn't cheap.
We are estimating the total cost of all of that will be about $250 million.
But it is a solution environmental groups and the power companies can agree on.
Importantly to us, it also benefits our customers because for Santee Cooper, this is the most cost-effective way for us to deal with this byproduct.
Even if it took 10 years to do it, every day that goes by, you're a little bit safer.
The state of South Carolina is going to be eliminated from the threats and dangers of coal ash ponds, and we feel the people of North Carolina deserve the same.